The flight back to Bend landed later than I hoped, yet I drove straight to the storage lot without going home first. That RV had been the one thing I bought for myself in years, and I wanted to make sure it was still where I left it. Walking through the rows of vehicles, I didn't see the familiar shape. Nothing sat in my assigned space. A young employee noticed me staring and came over with a hesitant look. "Mr. Brannon, you're here for the Redwood." "Where is it?" He shifted, almost whispering. "The owner picked it up a few weeks ago." A cold jolt ran through me. "I'm the owner. No one else has permission to touch it." He swallowed hard and pulled a folder from his desk. "We logged the release with the updated title. Maybe there was a mix-up." The copy slid across the counter. A new name sat on the document in plain print, Dylan Hart. For a moment I couldn't say anything. My daughter's husband had no claim to that RV. Not a cent of it came from him. I figured I should talk to the name on the original title. That amount of money could cover several months of rent in Bend. Dylan hadn't been improvising. He'd built a little business on something he didn't own. "Let me see the contract," I said. The man handed it over, adding, "I don't want trouble, just clarity. If I need to get my money back, I'll go that route." He left after a few minutes, unsure whether he should feel angry or embarrassed. Watching him walk away, a wave of disbelief edged in. Dylan had been collecting payments long before filing the forged ownership transfer. That meant he'd planned everything even earlier. Messages pinged on my phone as I drove to Angela's office. She welcomed me in without ceremony, sensing the urgency. "This came to my door," I said, placing the folder on her desk. Angela reviewed the papers quickly, then clicked through her computer to pull up the listing Dylan used. "Let's dig into the documents he uploaded. Platforms like this require VIN verification." She enlarged one of the forms. "Here." Her finger traced a faint irregularity in the VN sequence. "See the last digit, it's been altered. A small edit, but enough to bypass a basic filter." "Why change the VIN?" "To match the fake title he created. Most platforms don't double-check beyond format." Her explanation pressed a new weight on everything I thought I understood. Each step Dylan took required effort. Nothing about it was accidental. Before Angela could open another file, my phone buzzed again. A new email appeared, unsigned, with a single line, "You don't know who Dylan owes." The message ended there. No threat, no request, just a warning. The sender's address looked scrambled, the kind of throwaway account used by people who don't want to be found. Angela leaned closer. "Who sent that?" "No idea." She frowned. "That's not random. Someone knows more about his dealings." The thought that Dylan might be tangled in debts or scams I'd never heard of forced me to pause. Had I ignored small signs because I wanted peace for Lena? Had I chosen silence when I should have questioned more? Those weren't comfortable questions, but they surfaced anyway. The phone rang before I finished processing the email. Lena's name lit the screen. Her voice trembled the moment she spoke. "Dad, what did you say to Dylan? He's really upset. He told me you're trying to tear us apart." "I'm not. He swears you're making up accusations because you never liked him. Mom's relatives heard something, and now they think you're losing it." She sounded caught between fear and frustration, unable to choose a side without betraying one of us. Dylan had always known how to frame a story, so he looked like the wounded party. "Lena, listen." She cut me off. "I can't handle all of this. Just stop for a bit, please." The call ended abruptly. A thought settled in, maybe stepping back would protect her. Maybe the investigation would balloon into something so messy it would leave her stranded between two people she cared about. Pulling the complaint might spare her from unraveling the truth about the man she married. Angela watched my expression shift. "You're thinking of dropping the case. I don't want to make her life harder." Angela rested her palms on the desk. Michael, look at the pattern. He didn't just take your RV. He built lies around it, took money from strangers, altered documents, and dragged your name into the mess. Silence isn't kindness. It's fuel. He's counting on you to back down. Her tone wasn't harsh, just steady enough to keep me from sinking into indecision. Before I could answer, a new email arrived from the DMV caseworker assigned to my complaint. It contained an attachment with a brief note. Per your request, here is the scanned signature used in the transfer filing. Angela opened the file. My name appeared at the bottom of the document, but every curve looked mechanical, too smooth, too uniform, not written by hand. The signature I'd used my entire life had never looked like that. Angela zoomed in. This is a copy-paste job. He didn't even bother matching the pen pressure. Studying the forged signature didn't spark anger the way I expected. Just a dull understanding, an acknowledgement that Dylan believed no boundary existed unless he rewrote it himself. An email from my insurance company landed in my inbox early the next day. The subject line mentioned maintenance reimbursement. That alone set off alarms. Opening it revealed a claim filed by Dylan 2 weeks earlier, complete with fabricated invoices, staged repair notes, and a request for a sizable payout. The message ended with a notice that my entire policy had been frozen pending investigation. My phone rang before I finished reading. Dylan's name flashed on screen. "Why are you dragging my name through the mud?" he snapped the moment I answered. "You filed a claim on my RV, with forged paperwork. You're overreacting. The reimbursement was routine maintenance." "Routine maintenance doesn't require impersonating me," I said. He let out a sharp breath. "You're making this worse. If you don't withdraw whatever you sent to the police, I'll take this further. Don't test me." The call ended with a threat disguised as frustration. He didn't sound cornered. He sounded irritated that someone had finally stopped letting things slide. Lena showed up at my door that afternoon. Her hands fidgeted as she stepped into the living room. "Dad, Dylan told me what you're doing. This whole thing is getting out of control." "It's been out of control for a while, Lena." She shook her head. "He explained the title mix-up. He said you knew. Maybe you forgot signing something. But he's trying, and you're pushing him into a corner. Could you step back a bit for the sake of our family?" That last sentence revealed more than she intended. Dylan must have rehearsed it with her. She wasn't speaking from conviction. She was repeating a script meant to keep me from digging any deeper. "Lena, listen to me. He's lying to you. There's a forged signature, altered VIN numbers payouts he tried to collect." She cut me off. "Stop. You're talking like he's some criminal. Look at the evidence." "I can't do this right now," she whispered, before leaving as quickly as she came. Her confusion didn't anger me. It showed how well Dylan had shaped the narrative around himself. He always positioned his problems as burdens others forced him to carry. Later that evening, Angela came by my house with a laptop and a folder of copied documents. "You'll need a solid packet showing the original ownership," she said. "The insurance issue changes the stakes. We worked through receipts, purchase agreements, registration forms, everything tying the RV legally to me." Angela organized them with the precision of someone used to confronting complicated disputes. "You see the pattern," she said. "He kept creating activity around the RV to build a timeline that made him look like the rightful owner." "That explains the rentals," I answered, "and the false insurance claim. Fraudsters don't usually diversify unless they feel confident they won't be challenged." Her words left a heavy pause. Confidence was exactly what Dylan carried, an entitlement so strong that he never questioned whether consequences existed. The next step involved retracing the RV's path. We drove to the old storage site, though I half expected them to refuse any more help after everything that had happened. A staff member recognized me immediately. "I remember the redwood," he said. "I can check the logs again if you want." He led us to a small office and pulled up their security footage archives. Dates and times rolled across the monitor until he stopped at an entry the week my RV vanished. "There," he said. The recording showed Dylan arriving with another man. The stranger remained partially turned away, but his posture carried the confidence of someone who knew the plan. They exchanged a few words, climbed into the RV, and pulled away without hesitation. Angela leaned closer. "Who's that with him?" "Never seen him before." The employee rewound to a clearer angle. The stranger wore a jacket pulled low, but his face appeared briefly as he checked the mirrors. He wasn't a friend of the family. He wasn't anyone I recognized. "Do you want a copy of this?" the employee asked. "Yes," I said. "Please." He transferred the clip to a USB drive, handed it over, and returned to his desk. Angela tucked the drive into a folder with the rest of the evidence. Walking back to my truck, a thought kept circling. Dylan hadn't acted alone. Someone had helped him move the RV, someone who didn't mind brushing against fraudulent activity. That suggested a larger motive, maybe even ties to the debts hinted at in the anonymous email. The idea that he'd dragged my daughter's life into something more dangerous than entitlement made the air feel heavier. After Angela left, I remained in the truck and played the footage from the USB. Dylan stepped into the driver's seat, then glanced toward the camera with a grin one I'd seen before whenever he believed he'd secured an advantage. The video paused there when I stopped it. That expression, bold and pleased with himself, stayed frozen on the screen while I sat in the parked truck, thinking about how far this had already gone. A voicemail from the Bend Police Department waited on my phone when I woke up. The officer's tone stayed formal, but the message landed like a hit. "Mr." The kid waited, unsure what to do next, while I tried to understand how Dylan's name appeared on a legal form. I stepped away and called Dylan. He answered on the second ring. "Dylan, where's my RV?" A pause stretched out, then his voice tightened. "Can't do this right now, I'm busy." "This won't take long," he cut me off. "We'll talk later." The call ended. Not even a full minute of conversation. A rush of heat gathered in my chest. Dylan always had excuses, always dodged responsibility, but taking the RV required planning. Paperwork? Intent? It wasn't some misunderstanding. I pulled up an app I sometimes use to check rental prices. Habit pushed me to type a few details of my model. The moment the page loaded, a listing popped up with a familiar set of photos, my RV parked in the same lot where I last saw it. The description claimed it as Dylan's rig, fully available for long-term rentals. "Brannon, your case is temporarily on hold. A counter-complaint has been filed by Mr. Dylan Hart, alleging harassment and attempting to reclaim property he says you gifted. Until we review both sides, access to the RV file is restricted." The words left a dull throb in my chest. Any progress I'd made vanished in a single filing. Dylan wasn't just defending himself, he was flipping the narrative, and he knew exactly how much ground that could win him. Lena still hadn't answered any of my texts. Her silence said enough. Dylan must have told her a version of the story where I was the aggressor, the father trying to break apart their marriage. Families in Bend talked fast, and the story must have traveled even faster. At work, a few co-workers watched me a bit too long, pretending not to. My supervisor, Mark, approached near the coffee machine. "Need a word, Mike," he said. We stepped into a small office. He rubbed the back of his neck before speaking. "I got a call from someone asking about your conduct. Mentioned a domestic dispute involving property. I didn't give them anything, but what's going on?" "Someone filed a false report against me," I said. He nodded slowly. "You've always handled things straight. Just keep me updated. HR doesn't like surprises." Stepping back onto the floor felt heavier than usual. Mark didn't accuse me of anything, but the fact he needed to ask showed how far Dylan's version of events had traveled. By noon, tension had wrapped itself around my ribs. Thoughts of Lena returned over and over, her believing Dylan's lies, her carrying stress that wasn't hers to hold. A part of me wondered whether dropping everything would shield her. Maybe letting Dylan win the RV would help her keep her life stable. The idea sat there longer than it should have. Angela arrived just after my shift ended, walking with purpose through the parking lot. "We need to talk," she said, not wasting time. "I heard from the officer reviewing your case. Dylan's countersuit won't hold long, but it slows everything down. That's the point." "I know. It's working," I said. Angela studied my face. "You're thinking of backing off." "Lena's barely speaking to me. He convinced her I'm attacking him to ruin their marriage. I don't want to put her through more." "Michael," she said firmly, "men who forge signatures escalate when they feel cornered. If you withdraw now, he'll cement ownership. You'll lose the RV and he'll spin that as proof he did nothing wrong." She wasn't wrong, but fear for Lena tugged harder than logic. Angela opened her bag. "There's more. A renter contacted me through a mutual connection. Dylan's preparing a new long-term lease, 6 months, big payout, and he asked about moving the RV to Idaho." "So he's trying to hide it," I said. "Yes. Once it crosses state lines, everything complicates jurisdiction recovery, even insurance claims. If he gets it out of Oregon, you'll be fighting uphill." Every sentence she spoke pulled me back from the edge of giving in. "Come with me," she added. "There's something else you should see." We drove to the Walmart on Highway 20, one of the places Dylan often used as a meetup spot for renters. Angela knew the layout better than I did. She pointed toward the far end of the lot where RVs and trailers usually parked overnight. "Look there," she said. A large pickup with dual rear wheels sat near the corner. Fresh straps were coiled in the bed, along with towing equipment that looked new. A man leaned against the truck while scrolling on his phone. He wasn't Dylan, but familiarity crept in. He had the same build as the stranger from the storage lot footage. As we watched, he checked something under the truck, then looked around like he was waiting for someone. A low unease crept through me. "He's preparing to move it," I said quietly. Angela nodded. "And once it's gone, you'll only see it again if someone out there decides to help." My phone buzzed again, another ignored call from Lena. She had probably left a voicemail shaped by Dylan's fears, telling me to stop, to give him space to let things settle. Nothing about this situation would settle. Not with a man who kept resetting the rules whenever they didn't suit him. The stranger straightened up and stepped toward the truck door. Something about the motion, steady, confident, unhurried, told me Dylan had already given him instructions. I leaned against my own truck, processing everything, the countersuit, my blocked case file. Lena's distance, the mounting lies, the possibility that the RV might be gone by morning. Angela didn't speak, giving space for the realization forming in my gut. The stranger got into his truck, the engine starting with a deep rumble. He didn't drive off immediately, just idled waiting. A voicemail from an unfamiliar number greeted me as I left the Walmart lot. The caller sounded anxious. "Mr. Brannon, I'm reaching out because I paid Dylan Hart a large deposit for your RV weeks ago, and he keeps postponing pickup. He won't answer now. If he's running, I need to know." Another renter abandoned by Dylan. Another debt in a growing pile. Each new message tightened the sense that he was preparing to disappear with whatever cash he'd collected. Angela met me later that morning at her office. She carried a manila folder and placed it on the table. "I got something you need to see," she said. "A contact at the DMV owed me a favor." She pulled an earlier version of the digital file Dylan submitted. She opened the folder. This signature, the one he used to transfer ownership, was uploaded from an IP address linked to a financial brokerage firm in Bend. Guess who used to work there? Dylan, I answered. He didn't just forge your name, she continued. He used equipment from a place that fired him. That ties the fraud directly to him, not just to a fake document. The discovery changed the tone of everything. Instead of one forged signature, there was a trail leading back to Dylan's past mistakes, a pattern he never corrected. We drove to the police station to hand over the evidence. The officer in charge looked over the documents, but maintained a neutral expression. "We'll review this," he said. "However, Mr. Hart submitted a video earlier today. It depicts you shouting and approaching him in a way he found threatening. Until we clarify the context, we're asking both parties to keep distance. No contact with him or your daughter." The statement drained whatever air remained in the room. Angela spoke first. "What video?" "Mr. Hart claims it shows hostile behavior," the officer answered. My mouth dried. "Did he mention where it was recorded?" "He gave a general description. We'll verify." We stepped outside. Angela crossed her arms, thinking fast. "He's setting you up," she said. "That video needs to be examined." She made a call, speaking briefly to someone who specialized in image analysis. Within an hour, we arrived at a small office near downtown. The analyst, a middle-aged man with a calm voice, loaded the video onto his monitor. The footage showed me in my driveway weeks earlier speaking firmly to Dylan about a late payment he owed Lena. The audio had been altered. My sentences had gaps, and Dylan's responses were nearly muted, making it appear as if I was lecturing him unprovoked. The analyst leaned forward. "See this reflection here?" A sliver of metal gleamed near the edge of the frame. "That's a license plate," he continued. "Let me enhance it." Pixels sharpened gradually until several numbers became recognizable. Angela's eyes widened first. "That's your RV's plate." The analyst nodded. "This video was recorded while he was using the vehicle, not on neutral ground. He staged this." A small current of relief cut through me, proof supporting what I had been saying for weeks. Still, the pressure of the police restriction lingered. Without the full picture, they were hesitant to take sides. Angela placed a hand on my shoulder. "This is real evidence, hard to dispute. We take this straight to the officer." Before heading out, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. This one from the renter who had called earlier. "Mr. Brannon Dillon moved up our meeting. He says he can deliver the RV today at the Elk Lake turnout. Something feels off. Thought you should know." The timing hit hard. Dillon must have sensed the investigation tightening around him. Moving the RV sooner meant fewer eyes, fewer obstacles, fewer chances for me to intercept whatever he planned. "We need to go," I said. Angela gathered the files. "Let's bring the analyst's report and the DMV IP record. The officer will want both." But the officer wasn't available. He'd been called to another case, and the desk sergeant wouldn't accept additional evidence without verifying the chain of custody. Procedures stood between me and urgent action. "We don't have hours," Angela whispered as we left. "If he's meeting someone today, he'll try to hand the RV off for good." A sense of momentum carried me toward the truck. Not panic, just clarity. Dillon had accelerated the timeline, and the window to stop him shrank with every minute. Angela paused by the passenger door. "I'll text the analyst to prepare a formal statement. Go. I'll meet you with the papers." I nodded and climbed into the driver's seat. The engine rumbled to life. My phone vibrated again, another renter asking if the RV was still arriving early. Traffic moved slowly on the stretch leading out of Bend. My hands tightened around the wheel as I checked the message for the exact meeting point, a turnout near Elk Lake, not far from the trailheads. The truck rolled forward, picking up speed. Scrolling down revealed a packed calendar, week after week, blocked out, already rented. Someone had been making money on it for months while I was traveling for work, believing everything at home stayed steady. My thumb hovered over the contact button for the listing. A dozen questions churned how he got the title, who helped him, why Lena never mentioned anything, but none of them settled into words. More bookings appeared as I scrolled each confirmation. Another blow, another reminder that this wasn't an error or a clerk's oversight. The employee approached again. "Sir, do you want to file a report with us?" "Not yet," I said, though the words came out flat. The app refreshed on its own. A new reservation flashed across the screen, followed by another offer Dylan must have approved only minutes ago, renting out what he didn't buy, what he had no right to claim. A man walked through the gate behind me, keys jingling as he passed. No certainty waited ahead, just the sense that Dylan was already setting the stage for whatever came next. Cars lined the turnout near Elk Lake, but the RV stood out the moment I pulled in. Dylan hovered beside it, checking his phone and pacing with quick steps. A man waited a few feet away, holding a clipboard, likely the renter he planned to hand the RV off to before disappearing. He didn't notice me until I stepped out of the truck. "Are you kidding me?" Dylan barked, marching toward me. "You don't back off and you show up here? Fine. You want a scene? I'll give you one." "I'm not here to fight," I said. "You're not getting this RV again, ever. Walk away or lose the last chance you've got." The threat rolled out sharp and eager, like he'd been rehearsing it. He wasn't acting cornered. He was acting triumphant, convinced he had won. I raised my phone and pressed record. The gesture stopped him mid-stride. He squared his shoulders. "Put that down," he snapped. "You don't have permission." "I'm documenting what happens next," I said. His face twisted. "You're ruining everything. You're ruining Lena's life, you're ruining mine. You'll regret." A police cruiser turned into the lot, cutting off his rant. Dylan froze, eyes darting between my phone and the approaching officer. Another cruiser followed. The renter stepped back, unsure whether to leave or wait. I moved several steps away to give the officers space. Dylan tried to intercept one of them. "Officer, thank God you're here," he said, voice shifting into wounded calm. "He's stalking me. He keeps showing up trying to take back a gift. This is harassment. Look at what I've dealt with." The officer raised a hand. "Sir, step aside. We'll speak with both of you." Angela's car rolled up seconds later. She got out holding a folder, walking fast but controlled. "I have evidence for your investigation," she told the nearest officer. "Video analysis, DMV documents, and statements from renters." Dylan stiffened. "She's helping him fabricate this. You can't allow—" "We'll review everything," the officer said, shutting him down. Angela handed over the paperwork. The officer flipped through the pages, pausing at the DMV report, then at the analyst's findings about the forged video Dylan submitted earlier. Another officer approached Dylan. "Sir, we need your ID and the keys to the vehicle." "My ID," he said, stunned. "He's the one causing problems. I've tried to be patient." Before he could finish, the renter stepped forward with his contract in hand. "Officer, I paid him a deposit for this RV. He promised delivery today. I haven't seen the RV until now." He passed the paper over. The officer skimmed it, frowned, and then passed it to a colleague. "Mr. Hart," the officer said, "we now have multiple claims of fraudulent transactions associated with this vehicle." Dylan threw his hands up. "This is insane. He's turned everyone against me. Michael is trying to destroy my life." Angela spoke calmly. "Your own video places you in the RV while claiming you never had possession. That reflection shows the license plate. The timestamp matches the DMV record." Dylan glared at her, then at me. "You did this? You think you're teaching me some lesson? You think you're helping Lena?" His voice cracked, not with remorse, rage powered by entitlement slipping from his grasp. The officer stepped behind him. "Mr. Hart, turn around. You're being detained for suspected fraud, forgery, and theft." What? No, this isn't. Turn around, the officer repeated. Dylan's hands shook as he obeyed. Cuffs clicked around his wrists. He turned his head, looking at me like he still expected me to save him from the consequences he built. The renter exhaled hard. Glad someone finally stopped him. The officers moved Dylan toward the cruiser. He kept talking, voice rising even as they guided him forward. You're tearing the family apart. Michael, remember that. This is on you. The door shut, cutting him off. A third officer approached me. Mr. Brannon, we'll need a statement, but based on what we've reviewed, it appears you were the victim here. The vehicle will be impounded temporarily for evidence processing, then returned to you. I nodded. Words didn't come easily, not with adrenaline still humming in my chest. Angela placed a hand on my arm. It's moving in the direction it should. The rental client hovered a few steps away. If you need my statement too, I'll give it. Thank you, I said. Officers began photographing the RV and discussing procedure. The cruiser lights pulsed across the lot, catching the edges of metal and gravel. One of the officers climbed into the RV to secure it for towing. I stood beside my truck, watching, as the tow unit positioned itself to haul the RV toward the evidence yard. The rhythm of police radios carried across the turnout, steady, indifferent, procedural. The RV lifted slightly as the tow rig tightened its straps. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched the vehicle ease forward, leaving the spot where Dylan nearly closed his final escape. The courthouse in Deschutes County felt more crowded than usual the morning Dylan's hearing took place. Attorneys murmured to their clients, clerks shuffled paperwork from table to table, and the sound carried just enough tension to remind everyone why they were there. Dylan sat at the defense table with a public defender beside him. His expression shifted between anger and disbelief, as though the charges, 3 counts of financial fraud, forged documents, and unlawful possession of property were inconveniences rather than crimes. Lena entered a moment later with her own attorney. Her eyes met mine briefly. Something in her face had changed since Elk Lake, not fear, not confusion, but the sober understanding that truth doesn't stay hidden forever. She took her seat several rows back away from Dylan. The judge reviewed the evidence, slowly giving each document its moment. The altered VIN report. The forged signature traced to the brokerage firm Dylan once worked for. The video analysis showing he manipulated the recordings. Statements from renters who had handed him deposits he never intended to honor. Footage of him driving the RV away weeks before, claiming he didn't have access to it. Lena's hands tightened around the files she brought. She leaned toward her attorney and whispered something, then settled again as the prosecutor continued outlining Dylan's actions. He glanced back at me several times, as if expecting some gesture of pity or negotiation. None came. Distance had become the only boundary that made sense. The judge spoke clearly. Mr. Hart, the evidence demonstrates a deliberate pattern of deception. This court finds you guilty on all counts. A hush spread across the room. Dylan stiffened and shook his head. This is ridiculous, he muttered. Michael set this up. He wanted to ruin me. The judge raised a hand. Enough. You will have your chance to speak at sentencing, but this case presents overwhelming proof of your actions. Personal conflicts do not excuse criminal behavior. Lena's eyes lowered. Her shoulders sagged as if some final thread had snapped. She'd held on to denial for months. Now the veil had lifted. She saw the marriage for what it had become, a series of manipulations dressed as devotion. Sentencing was direct several years in federal custody restitution to multiple victims, and a permanent restriction barring him from accessing any property belonging to me or Lena. When the bailiff escorted him towards the side door, Dylan turned his head. This isn't over, he hissed. I didn't respond. The courtroom had no more space for his stories. After the hearing, Lena approached cautiously. She didn't try to defend him. She didn't apologize either. She just spoke with a tired honesty. Dad, I didn't know everything he'd been doing. I thought you were pushing him too hard. I was wrong. You saw what you needed to, I said. Her voice wavered. I've already filed for divorce. I'm taking some time away from Bend. I need to figure out how I let it get this far. I nodded. No lecture, no analysis. She deserved room to reclaim her own judgment. Angela joined us near the exit. You handled this with more restraint than most people I know, she said. Now you can breathe. I'm working on it. She offered a small smile. Start by taking care of yourself. Long cases take a toll even when you win. The weeks that followed returned me to a quieter routine. I went back to the power plant, cut a few shifts, and kept evenings open. On weekends, I took short drives around the Cascade Range, no major destinations, just distance from the edges of what had happened. The RV returned after its final inspection. It looked the same from the outside, yet touching the door handle carried a different feeling. Not pride, not anger. More like reclaiming something I never should have lost. Angela emailed me a link to a maintenance workshop in town. I signed up without hesitation. The first class focused on simple repairs, changing filters, adjusting seals, tuning minor systems. Taking that course wasn't about learning mechanics. It marked the first time I drew a line around my own belongings and said, "You'll handle this yourself now." One evening, near the end of summer, I pulled the RV into my garage. The space was nothing special, just concrete tools and the smell of old motor oil, but it felt steady enough. A new toolkit sat on the workbench. The instructor at the workshop recommended buying one, and I'd followed through. I didn't move, just watched the bookings stack up on my phone, each one proving this situation had gone further than anything I expected. When I stepped off that plane, Dylan opened the front door before I even knocked. Lena hovered behind him, arms crossed, trying to read both of us. "Why are you storming over here?" Dylan said, blocking the entryway. "Where's the RV? Don't spin this. Just answer." He gave a dry laugh. "You probably forgot you signed the transfer. We talked about it months ago. You must have slipped." Lena's gaze shifted. "Dad, did you maybe sign something without noticing?" Dylan said, "No." The word left with more force than I intended. "I didn't sign anything. And he knows that?" Dylan stepped forward. "You're confused. It happens. Let's sit down and clear this up." "Not with you twisting every sentence," I said. Lena touched Dylan's arm. "Maybe we should slow down." He kept his voice low, but irritation leaked through. I opened the box and checked each wrench and driver. My hand settled around the ratchet handle, testing its weight. Something about that simple motion grounded me in a way I hadn't expected. No declarations surfaced, no grand reflection. Just the steady awareness that life had returned to a pace I could claim as my own. I tightened one of the panel screws near the entry door, listened to the click of the tool, and reached for the next piece. "Michael, you're making a mess out of nothing." The room tightened around us. Lena's uncertainty. Dylan's practiced confidence, the sense that some line I never knew existed had already been crossed. No explanation from him would repair what I had seen at the storage lot. "I'll handle this myself," I said, turning toward the door. Lena called after me. "Dad, please don't blow this up. We can figure it out." Her voice trembled, yet even that didn't shake Dylan's calm mask. His hand slipped around her waist like he was sealing his version of the truth into place. The drive to the DMV didn't untangle anything. A clerk reviewed the records while typing briskly. After a few minutes, she handed me a stack of printed documents. "Everything was submitted correctly," she said. We validated the signature and processed the transfer. A glance at the page hit hard. My name appeared on the signature line, but the strokes looked stiff and too clean. The clerk leaned in. See this portion, it's slightly pixelated compared to the rest. That usually means it was dropped in from another file. So it's fake. She lowered her voice. I can't label it that. What I can say is the original signature didn't come through our standard channels. Someone walked past and paused. A familiar voice followed. Is that you, Michael? Angela Ruiz stood by the service counter holding a folder. We hadn't spoken in years, but her expression told me she caught enough of that conversation to understand trouble was brewing. Her tone stayed measured. You dealing with a title problem? Something like that, I said. Angela waited until the clerk stepped away. I overheard a bit. You didn't sign that transfer, did you? No. She exhaled slowly. Then this isn't a family disagreement. This is structured. He planned it. The directness stung, not because it was harsh, but because it felt true. Angela had always been blunt. Maybe that's why her words landed harder than I expected. She motioned toward a seating area. You should ask them to freeze any future changes. Otherwise, he'll keep moving things around. Folks who fake paperwork rarely stop at one form. Before answering, my phone buzzed. A rental inquiry popped up from a stranger, a question about maintenance fees and scheduling. Dylan's listing had been active long enough that people assumed I managed the bookings. Angela noticed my reaction. More rental stuff. Yes, I said. He's been doing this for a while. She opened her folder. Listen, the sooner you create a paper trail, the better. Don't wait for him to trip himself up. People like that survive on hesitation. Those words echoed something my father once said. A man who won't draw a line will watch others draw one for him. I hadn't thought of that in years. The clerk returned. If you want to block future title activity, you'll need to sign this request. It's temporary, but it stops transfers while an investigation begins. Angela nudged the form toward me. Do it. Otherwise, he'll sell it out from under you. The pen felt heavier than it should. Not from the act of signing, but from everything that followed lawyers' arguments, the possibility of dragging Lena through a conflict she wasn't ready to face. Dylan had created a maze, and he counted on me walking away to keep the peace. The form needed only a signature and a date. My hand hesitated before touching the paper. Angela waited without pressuring, giving room for the decision. Signing meant admitting this wasn't a misunderstanding. It meant acknowledging that someone in my family believed he could take from me without consequence. The clerk cleared her throat softly. Whenever you're ready, sir. The pen met the page. The final stroke settled, and the clerk took the form back for processing. As she walked it toward her supervisor's desk, another notification lit up my phone, another renter asking when my RV would be available. I stayed at the counter watching the clerk deliver the paperwork, trying to understand how a simple signature became the only way to keep Dylan from moving further than he already had. A man I'd never seen before stood on my porch early the next morning, holding a thick folder and looking as though he'd rehearsed what he wanted to say. Are you Michael Brannon? Yes. He exhaled with relief. Good. I've been trying to sort out something with your son-in-law. The contract he gave me doesn't look right, and the title lists this address. A stack of printed emails, deposit receipts, and a rental agreement with Dylan's signature appeared when he opened the folder. The deposit alone was a few $1,000s paid up front. I've been waiting for your RV for 2 weeks, he continued. Dylan keeps delaying pickup, said he needed maintenance.